Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's workshop, Women in the Workforce Post-Pandemic. We all know that the pandemic has affected and changed virtually every facet of our lives. However, interestingly, research continues to show that it's women who have faced disproportionate challenges, especially as it relates to career advancement. So we have a couple of career experts with us today who are going to discuss some of the specific challenges and provide you with some success strategies that you can use in your career path. So let's meet our experts. First up, we have our very own Rebecca Davis. She serves as the Career Services Manager in Career Services at the University of Arizona Global Campus. In this role, she supports staff and provides advice, guidance, and resources to students and alumni across all degree programs. Rebecca joined the university in 2010 and has served in various capacities in higher education, including enrollment, advising, and as a faculty member. Prior to joining UAGC, Rebecca worked in recruiting, talent acquisition, and career management. She holds an undergraduate degree in business administration, a master's in organizational management, and is a certified Myers-Briggs type focus coach, and holds an Operation Promise certification as a certified veterans service provider. We're also delighted to have with us today Emily Stark, the founder of Marketable Mama. She is a seasoned career coach, certified resume writer, and life coach. During her career, she supported more than 1,000 people during their career transitions to help them land their dream jobs through client-focused career coaching, revamped resumes, confidence-boosting mock interviews, and personal brand-forward LinkedIn profiles. Most importantly, Emily has supported working and return-to-work moms as they navigate their career journeys to meet the uniqueness of their passions, skills, and families to land fulfilling careers. Emily's progressed in the career industry within university, outplacement, and freelance sectors while earning a certification in professional resume writing, a master's in curriculum and instruction, and a life coach certification. Her career-specific writing has been featured in notable university and parenting newsletters, along with reputable mom blogs. Her career workshops have been presented at universities, corporate professional development training events, and community centers. We are absolutely thrilled to have them both with us today. Very quickly, before I turn it over to Rebecca and Emily, to our audience members, if you encounter any questions during the workshop, please feel free to drop those into the chat. I'm going to be monitoring the chat and Q&A area to gather those questions. And our experts are going to leave just a few minutes at the end so that we can address questions. Rebecca and Emily, if you'll let me know when you're ready for questions. And now, without further ado, ladies, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Brandy. Thank you for having us today.
I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we'll get started. Thank you, Brandy. That was a very energized welcome. I love it. So the topic today, as Brandy mentioned, women in the workforce post-pandemic. We're both really excited to be here and to talk about this topic. It has hit home for us, and while planning this, we've talked a lot about our own personal experiences along with how it's affect the clients and people that we work with. As Brandy said, I am Emily Stark, and I'm the founder of Marketable Mama. Just a little context here, Rebecca and I work together at Bridgepoint, and I've learned so much from Rebecca. She was a senior career coach and fellow working mom, and I'm just so excited to be here and to share this message with her. We've learned a lot together over the years, and I'm so happy we've stayed connected.
Absolutely. I'm so glad Emily could join me. I follow her LinkedIn and her Instagram posts and everything she talks about as far as women in the workforce. I'm so excited for her to share today. As Brandy mentioned, I'm Rebecca Davis. I work here at the University of Arizona Global Campus. And when we put this topic together last summer, I think our hope was we would be more post-pandemic at this point here in February, but we'll really talk about the last couple of years and look into the future as well of what the workforce could look like post-pandemic. So in our time together today, we will dive into the impact the pandemic had on women. We'll discuss the necessary changes the workforce needs to make post-pandemic, and then we'll talk about career growth tactics for women.
I'm just going to slide this down. So here we go.
Perfect. Awesome. The pandemic has caused women in the workforce career strain, an increased workload managing the home, and emotional burnout. And there are a host of factors that have contributed to career strain. Those include job loss and negative career impacts over the course of the pandemic, such as increased caregiving responsibilities for both younger and older, and an overrepresentation of women in in-person jobs that were vulnerable to the COVID-19 crisis. The U.S. Department of Labor states, while the amount of time and energy they, meaning women, spend on unpaid labor at home has skyrocketed, their employment has suffered. Along with increases in household food insecurity, many moms have reported other effects of the pandemic beyond the labor market, including increased stress and anxiety. And for heavy homework, millennial moms especially feel the strain of the pandemic, as they are more likely to have younger kids at home and be at pivotal points in their careers. We'll dive more into the heavy home labor in the next few slides. And then there is the emotional burnout. The increase in women's unpaid work, both child care and housework, along with increased job loss, are important factors contributing to relatively high levels of stress, anxiety, and insomnia. And again, in the next few slides, we'll really dive deeper into the data behind the career strain, the home labor, and the emotional burnout women are experiencing during the pandemic and still into today. At the beginning of 2020, so pre-pandemic, the representation of women in corporate America was trending upwards. Between January 2015 and December 2019, the number of women in senior vice president positions increased from 23 to 28%. And in the C-suite from 17 to 21%. And that's according to Women in the Workplace 2020. However, if you are a woman in the workforce, a working mom in the workforce, or no working women and mothers, there is no surprise the toll the pandemic has taken on our women. However, what may be shocking is the data behind these numbers at a national level. The pandemic had an almost immediate impact on women's employment. From 2020 data reported by McKinsey & Company, 1 in 4 women considered leaving the workforce. While all women were impacted by the pandemic, the 3 groups that experienced the largest challenges were working mothers, women in senior management positions, and Black women. The biggest disparity were women with children under 10. As the pandemic erupted in the spring of 2020, roughly 3.5 million mothers with school-aged children either lost jobs, took leaves of absence, or left the labor market altogether. And that's according to an analysis by the Census Bureau. And as of June 2021, the Bureau of Labor and Statistics reported that there are 1.8 million fewer women in the workforce than pre-pandemic. This loss of women in the workforce has obviously widened the gender gap. Will these women return to work? That's the big question. According to MetLife, 2 in 3 women who are forced out of the workforce say they are planning on returning. Later in the presentation, we will share strategies of how we can create a workforce that envelops these returning women and strategies women can adopt to re-enter the workforce. I talked about the increase in home labor. So let's examine one of the factors that led to both the loss of women in the workforce and burnout that many working women continue to feel. In 2020, 93% of school-aged children moved to in-home virtual learning. Additionally, a Pew survey in 2020 found 59% of women say they do more household work than their spouse or partner. It can be called invisible labor, mental load, but what it amounts to is the majority of housework tends to fall on women and heterosexual couples. While working mothers are a very resilient group and used to juggling work and family responsibilities, the pandemic heightened and amplified the increased home labor. A study conducted by McKinsey found mothers are more than 3 times as likely compared with fathers to meet the majority of the demands for housework and caregiving during the pandemic. And the pandemic has affected working mothers of color disproportionately. Latina mothers are 1.6 times more likely than white mothers to be responsible for all childcare and housework, and Black mothers are twice as likely to be handling these duties for their families. Roger Price, founding partner of Leading by Design, said, "So many women take more psychological ownership for how the home is going. The normal pressure of this during the pandemic, plus dealing with the impact of their work, can be overwhelming." So we want to hear from you in the chat. Based on what we've covered so far, what are some initial ideas of how we can support women with these heavy loads? So feel free to put any ideas you have initially in the chat as we move on to our next piece. And then there is the burnout. What is interesting is, and what we may be aware of on a personal level, is the amount of reported burnout for both men and women was actually higher in 2021 than 2020. Women in the workforce polled 65,000 North American employees and reported that 42% of women and 35% of men reported feeling burned out often or most always in 2021, compared to 32% of women and 28% of men in 2020. And we can only imagine that this is continuing into 2022. So what state does that leave working women in? One is dampened confidence. The stress and worry of managing the household is spilling over to women's perceived work performance. Only 25% of mothers reported they worried their work performance was being judged negatively because of their caregiving responsibilities, compared with 11% of fathers. I just want to emphasize that this is how women are feeling, but does not necessarily mean this is how they are actually perceived in the workforce.
Though there are many impacts to address in the future of working women, we've highlighted confidence, wages, and workplace trust to thread through our discussion today. Confidence is a theme heavily influencing working and return to work women. With half of women reporting not very confident at work, I wonder if this weighs on them as they consider pursuing a promotion or salary boost. I see a lack in confidence with most of the return to work moms or women I support. A recent study by Tech Pixies backs this in finding confidence as a top hurdle for returners. The questions in this image are some of the contributors to our lack in confidence, and for many, the pandemic has exacerbated them. As Rebecca touched on earlier, women of color have been hard hit in the pandemic. There's so much frustration in this story of women as key essential workers who make extreme sacrifices, yet take home barely half of the earnings of their white non-Hispanic counterparts. And the numbers you see at the top are the comparison to the dollar that their white non-Hispanic counterparts make. There's a lot of data on women earning less after a professional pause. Dr. Tyson, a business professor at UC Berkeley, attributes educational opportunities, and industry choices as reasons, but a primary finding in her research shows that the wage gap for men and women at the beginning of their careers has largely disappeared in many advanced industrial economies. Same education, same work, similar wage, but 5 to 10 years later, often after having children, the gender gap in earnings appears again. And women often choose part-time or step out of the promotion track or opt to pause. And the pandemic heightened this existing trend and exposed it to the world. One of the most disturbing outcomes of the pandemic are the trust-breaking workplace scenarios women have faced. Things like pushback on maternity leave logistics and unscheduled sick day pickups continue to be a significant struggle for working women. These are some pieces of stories women have shared on social media, which has become a hub for companionship and support for isolated working women.
So based on what we discussed today and our own personal experiences, there is no denying that the pandemic impacted women. But I want to say it is not all doom and gloom. The pandemic gave us an opportunity to pause, reevaluate, and ask ourselves, where do we go from here? What can we do as both organizations and individuals to rebuild the fractures of our future working women?
Improving the workforce for working women is so broad. There are significant societal, cultural, political shifts that are beginning to lean in a more optimistic direction. Over our time, we're going to focus on ways workplaces and women can take steps and make impacts that will ripple to our future. Work is such a large part of our lives. The Huffington Post Australia found the average person only spends 328 days socializing with friends and 13 years working in their lifetime. We're just gonna sit on that. I was surprised to read that. And the pandemic has forced us to blur the lines between personal and professional lives. For many working women, we began to experience our work with our kids and witness how they view us and our work through their eyes. So we're going to circle back around and spend the rest of these slides honing in on these areas of confidence, wages, and trust to identify ways to improve these big topics for working women. Before we jump into those topics, I want to pause on this quote and the word success here. The key to improving our workforce post-pandemic is building a mutually beneficial version of success. We've got to be invested in women and companies thriving forward together. Here's a list of 12 emerging company initiatives that are impacting working women positively. Knowing these are instrumental for return to work women because they can look for these initiatives and use these in research and interviews. And then working women can take note of these and push for this kind of programming to build confidence and leadership opportunities in their workplaces. A culmination of women forward opportunities will build the confidence, trust, and wages we need. A study by Lehman and McKinsey in 2021 evaluated women leaders. They found that seeing a woman leader inspired others to strive for more. It also found women leaders are more likely to uplift, advocate, and mentor other working women. This work often goes unpaid. That's the missing piece. Policies and incentives must be included in the structure to have a widespread system of encouragement for working women. The pandemic brought out a communal experience of struggle. Our takeaway can be a new appreciation for connection, devoting more time to ask questions, be transparent, and encourage to help build back the damaged trust. Women who are job searching or anticipating a career transition, I urge you to research companies and build a target list. There's a supply and demand on talent. If more quality candidates move to companies that embrace working women, then others will follow. Another piece is, until salary transparency is more widespread, negotiating yours is imperative. I like to tell my clients that 70% of hiring managers expect negotiation, and you're not only pushing for more money for yourself, it sets a trajectory for future women too. Internal hiring managers should support women's increased wages any chance they get. But it's an opportunity to humanize our experience together. And the more that we share these stories and what we are experiencing, the more we can have opportunities to build trust and customize schedules or change the way things are happening. I want to center to this list of top sites to start your target list, and look at best places to work. So best places to work is an entire assessment based on workplace trust. And so if you are in your job search, this is a really great place to start, because they are assessing how people are feeling based on trust with their managers, based on trust with people at various levels, and how those inner workings. And so I know, just as Letitia was talking about topics like how we're treated based on the color of our skin, or how we identify in a myriad of different ways, that folds into the trust. And so I really appreciate her topic, and this is a great opportunity to fold that into your job search and your career trajectory, and how you're looking at your next steps in work, and how you can make your workplace better. Okay, so I'm gonna bring this down, moving all around. I think that, there we go. I don't have the time here, but Aubrey, maybe your check, or Brandy, thank you. This is a question, Rebecca, you can take the wheel.
Yeah, absolutely. We just thought it was a good opportunity. We did want to open it up for Q&A, but also to, like Letitia was saying, we need women supporting women, or men supporting women. What does that look like, and how can we do that? What are some tangible ways to do that? And so the first question we wanted to post, everyone, if you wanted to type it in the chat or share, was, what change do you want to see for women in the workforce post-pandemic? Like we talked about earlier, we've all been given a moment to pause and think, how your organization or what you saw, how they dealt with the pandemic. And it's given us the opportunity to say, you know what, this is what we need to see in the future. And Emily shared the list of 12, but we'd love to hear from you. Was there one of those that stood out to you, or what do you want to see for women in the workforce post-pandemic?
Hi,
Do you
Rebecca.
mind? Sorry.
I'm so sorry. No, I just wanted to throw out there. We actually had a really good question come in on Facebook Live. I don't know if one of you guys want to try to tackle this, but one of our Facebook Live viewers asked about what about self-employed women? Have self-employed women been, equally affected or affected more or less? What have you guys seen?
Yeah, so I actually did a talk earlier this week about work options, different work options that women can take that they might not know about it. And on building your own business, entrepreneurship was one of the options there. And the key point I made about that is more than ever, touching on the women supporting women, there are more resources to be successful as a woman business owner. There are so many opportunities such as SCORE. Just myself, I'm an entrepreneur, so I have really leveraged those organizations that expose my business more. And then there are more funding channels focused on women-owned businesses than there have been in the past. So I think what's happening is I'm going to go to social media and say that this is a really cool place that we're seeing a lot of women-owned businesses and how they're doing it, like behind the scenes. And then people are just lifting them up because the story of women's struggle is so well known, but also things like small business support, like there are lots of different layers. And so, yes, I think women entrepreneurs have been impacted just as much as working women and return to work, but there's more opportunity to rally together and to succeed. Rebecca, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it goes back to the great resignation or the great reevaluation quote we shared is women did have an opportunity to say, is this meaningful work? Is this where I want to be working and what I want to be doing? And Emily, just when we were working on this presentation this week, shared her story of she was able to be at a crossroads because of the pandemic and make the decision about to fully become an entrepreneur and what that looked like.
Mm-hmm. Rebecca, you mentioned the 12 the slide with the 12 different workforce support programs. Do you mind if I go back there and then we can kind of, that might be helpful. And also I was worried about time, but now that we have a little bit, I do want to kind of dig in if there aren't any questions, or maybe there's a little bit more. Did I skip over it? Yes.
We've had some good conversations going on in the chat. And one thing that keeps coming up is really about communication and, active listening on the part of management and ensuring that those communication channels are open. So do you guys have any advice maybe for someone who's working at an organization where maybe communication's not ideal? How do we really open up those channels and promote that supportive culture that everyone needs to be successful?
One that came to mind when I saw that in the chat was the ERGs. Number 5 on this list, the employee resource groups, is creating a place for women or for working women to come together. And sometimes I think you feel, or I do, I should say, as a woman, I'm in this alone. I'm a working mom. I'm the only one experiencing these hardships, or I'm the only one experiencing these challenges with negotiating the way I work or my salary. But when women can come together and say, I'm experiencing that too, let's band together. Let's make our voices louder because we are together. So that's one idea that came to mind for me.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I love that, Rebecca. And also mentorship programs. That's another avenue. I know for myself, it's so much easier for me to talk to a person that identifies with the shared struggles and that we are going through together. And so if say one of my clients was bringing about the scenario you're presenting here, Brandy, that communication is not really at the forefront of day-to-day work, practicing that conversation with a mentor will build confidence, kind of like in a mock interview, going through the questions, hearing the feedback from the mentor, and perhaps some of their experience is a good first step. And then you're more equipped to have those conversations with people in your work sphere. And this can be on work schedule negotiations. This can be on salary negotiations. Practicing it and building your confidence and building out your talking points with someone else, I think is a really empowering step before you to build more communication. And then once that's done well, telling people on your team, like, hey, I had this really great conversation with our boss. I just want you to know, like, and that just sharing that positive experience with others can open up those channels and just really reshape the team dynamic.
And I think too, having women in leadership positions, I came across something that I did get a chance to share today, but from McKinsey, that says companies with more women executives are more likely to outperform those with fewer senior women. And working mothers comprise nearly a third of the female workforce in the United States in 2020. So I say all that to say employers cannot afford to ignore or minimize the hardship that millions of women now face. If organizations respond by building a more flexible and empathetic workplace, so I think that goes into the active listening, they can do a better job of retaining employees. Because if those organizations are not listening to the women, they're leaving. They are leaving and going to a different organization or leaving the workforce. So having hiring practices in place that give opportunities for more women in those senior roles who can support this, I think is a great thing that can happen in the future.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree, Rebecca.
Looks like we've got another comment from Facebook Live. Chadwick liked the comment on the employee resource groups, and he mentioned that HR needs to be more open to their employees in those respects.
Absolutely. Great comment. And like Chadwick said, whether it's a women's resource group or any type of ERG it can do great things for employee retention and morale and employees who work there.
I want to talk about returnships, if that's okay. Some of the people tuning in may not know about them, and I didn't get a chance to go over them, but I think this is a really great topic that folds into the point I made earlier about a vision of success that's mutually beneficial for women, working women, and for the company. Returnships have become more and more prevalent. Hewlett Packard, Amazon, big companies, as well as middle size and small, are making returnships a part of their company portfolios. And what that is a 12 to 18 week program, and it's catered toward people that have been out of the workforce for maybe 1 to 2 years, and they need that confidence boost and reacquaintance with their with the professional workplace, and just to upskill on tech and different things like that. And then it segues ideally into a position there. So I definitely think that if you are returning to work or considering that, or you know someone that is an option that a lot of people don't know about. And that confidence piece is just such a hard barrier. And I really feel like the returnship makes such a strong onboarding ramp for women that have been pushed off over the last couple years to just come back on in a communal, you're in a group of other women and men that have been out of the workforce too. So there's that collaboration, that community feel also. I can't say enough about it. And I hope if anyone knows someone that could use that information, I hope you'd share. Anything that
looks like we got a couple of other great comments. I love this when Chadwick chimed back in and said, when Chadwick was in the U.S. Army, he had a woman drill sergeant as a leader. Women can do anything a man can do. So yay. Yay, Chadwick, 100%. Ciara made a good comment about the importance of incorporating diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, in order to spark, innovative ideas within an organization.
Absolutely. Enveloping those and hiring processes can really, make a company a great place to work and foster, a place people want to work and a place people want to work at.
Yes, Rebecca, I totally agree. And also just on the topic of diversity, equity, inclusion, just having more leaders that do represent a wide span of people, I think is also just really empowering. Going back to the slide on the cycle of what that does, seeing people in those leadership roles that represent
Yeah, I think I really love the point that Emily made, and it kind of it goes back to something that we've talked about, in some of our other events, and that's just how critical it is for everyone growing up to be able to see leaders that look like them. We're never really going to have that inclusive leadership until every child can envision themselves as a leader, because they see that someone that looks like them has gone before them, or someone that thinks like them and behaves like them has gone before them. And so it's just critical, and it really paves the way for us to really achieve those inclusive goals that we talk about.
Absolutely. I think Emily talked about it, and when she talked about it earlier this week, what hit home to me was also the way my daughter saw how I handle work during the pandemic and what, I want to see the future for her. So that definitely hits home as a mother and someone who views also my own leadership as well.
I do want to talk about, while we're on the topic of executive or leaders, I do think there is an opportunity still for the white male leaders that are predominantly taking these roles to step in and to show working women support. One of those is number 7, family leave. For more men to take their entire paternity leave and show by modeling the importance of their family, and also going into those to the one-on-one, the communication piece, Brandy, that you were talking about earlier. Just little things like, how are your kids doing? Or, hey, I've got to run off and take this or go to my son's baseball game or whatever. doing little things like that, if you are a white male leader or just at any level, this isn't just a working women's situation that we're all living in together. There are opportunities for everyone to show their support and modeling, and I want to call that out. And if anyone in the chat wants to talk about something that they have experienced, I think just sharing ideas around that is a really interesting way to push things forward.
I think we posed the questions, what can organizations do, and what can we do as individuals as well to support each other? What does that look like? If you have any ideas, our day-to-day is career and career guidance, but at the end of the day, we're always learning too as individuals. And so if anyone has any ideas of, what they want to see in the future or how they've gone about supporting women, we'd love to hear it.
I'll throw something in there just based on my experience. I think all of us should not underestimate our abilities to mentor others.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I know, since I've been working here at UAGC, I have had some of the most incredible mentors. They were not officially mentors, they just became mentors to me. And I think, I don't think it's something that they set out to do, they just did, and I think so, especially as women, I think we really have to look inside ourselves and, don't underestimate yourself and don't underestimate your abilities and what you have to offer. And if you have the opportunity to help and mentor someone else, do it, and I think that's important.
I love that. Absolutely.
Yes, I totally agree, Brandy. And I mean, to have a mentorship program, it's not really necessary. Mentorship can happen on a day-to-day, minute, little short scenarios. Like I opened up and talked about how Rebecca supported me as not only in getting into the career coaching industry, but also as a working mom. And I remember, Rebecca, I hope you don't mind me sharing this, but when you did return from your maternity leave, there were lots of day-to-day things that she did and she shared with everyone to help. And I was pregnant with my second soon after, so I adopted a lot of the practices that Rebecca did. So this is just an example of, there doesn't have to be a program. You can just be a support system at work.
And I think one thing that I missed from the old life, pre-pandemic, was being in an office with other women and working mothers. And it was so easy to gather ideas of how to manage my career and how to manage my home life. And then the pandemic, I've been working from home the last couple of years. And so I've had to be so much more intentional of reaching out and being vulnerable with other women or anyone, just to say, what ideas do you have? Here's what I'm struggling with. And so it has to be so much more intentional now.
Thank you both so much. I know you guys have just offered tremendous insight and success strategies for our audience members today. So thank you both. Huge shout out to both Rebecca and Emily for sharing their time with us today. I know we're quickly approaching the top of the hour. So before we go, just really, really quick, I want to remind everybody about a few upcoming events that we have. Next week on February the 24th, that is Thursday next week, we have our community chats going to be hosted by Dr. Kara Metz, Katrina McNair, and Aisha Thomas. They're going to focus on staying positive while balancing work and life responsibilities. If you've not attended a community chat before, we encourage you to attend. They are very interactive, so come ready to participate and engage. Now, coming up in March, we have tons of activities for you as we honor International Women's Day. Our first event kicks off on March 7th as we feature Millie Virgil in a fireside chat to talk about embracing courage to live and lead authentically. As always, we want you to stay connected with us through the CWL website, where you can see the full calendar of upcoming events, register, and even access recordings of prior events. So we look forward to seeing you all next time. Stay well, everyone, and have a wonderful day.